In today's video, I'm going to show you how to understand your thoughts and your emotions. And once you learn how to do this, it will not only expand your self-awareness, but transform your life and understanding your state of mental health. Hi, and welcome back to Mental Health Power. So in one of the last videos I did, in fact, I think it was in quite a few of them, you would have heard me say a number of times things like we are not our thoughts and we are not our emotions and we are the observers of our thoughts and our emotions. And you would have seen that, and I'll put a link up here to an example of one of those videos, but you would have seen how I also mentioned this idea of observing our thoughts and not identifying with it. And in one of the videos I talked about we can choose to believe or not believe our thoughts. And so we can choose to accept or to ignore and to reject them. Now, that is only half of the story. And I guess one of the problems with talking to an audience, talking to multiple people, is that sometimes you can give guidance and advice that works for one set of people, but then it won't work for another. And this is because we will be at different mental and emotional physical states, and this will vary throughout our lives, right? So the advice that works for somebody who's, let's say, very deep in depression, like how I was in the past, and I mentioned another video, which is exactly why I wanted to make this video, because the exact advice I gave on overcoming the worst experiences of depression, and I gave an example of how using a mindfulness technique I was able to overcome that only really works for somebody who has thoughts, negative thoughts and negative self-talk that is just so overwhelming. So the best advice for somebody who is experiencing that, who is being completely run by their own thoughts, the best advice for them is going to be to not just believe any thought that comes in and to accept certain thoughts and to ignore other ones as well, because the negative thoughts are no longer, they're not helping them in any way. So they first need that first step, which is to disidentify. But when we are not in that state, and when we aren't so stuck in that negative state, but we still have depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues as well, we actually do need to pay attention to the kind of thoughts that we have, and we do need to pay attention to our emotions. So we shouldn't ignore our emotions. Our emotions are always there for a valid reason, just as our thoughts are. The only issue is when we become consumed and fully identified. So I wanted to clarify that. And so for those of us who do not have the problem of being very knee-deep in depression and anxiety and being completely run by those thoughts and being identified with them, what we need to do is to observe our thoughts, so still be disidentified with them, to feel our feelings, and still remember that they are not the complete truth of us, but we need to accept that they are still a part of us. So this means that in the same way that, like, we have an arm, if you have arms, we have legs, for example, we have other parts of our body, they are parts of us. But we wouldn't say, for example, that, like, I wouldn't say I am the arm. I wouldn't say I am my hand. I would say this hand, this arm is a part of me. So in the same way, we will have thoughts that are generated, that come about. We have feelings that come about as well. But we wouldn't say I am my thoughts and I am my feelings. But they are still there for a reason. So that's the big difference. So you could say the first step, as mentioned in the other videos, is the non-identification, the detachment from the identification with our thoughts and our emotions. That's the first step. Then after that, we have to understand, what are these thoughts? Where are they coming from? What are these feelings? Why are they there? Where did they come from? So the thoughts we have are valid. The feelings we have are valid. Once we learn not to fully identify with them, they are there for a reason. So we have to start asking ourselves questions, because these negative thoughts, negative feelings, and I use the word negative when really, we can just say they are painful thoughts or painful feelings or unhelpful thoughts, for example, because negative makes it seem like we shouldn't have them. But no, we have them for valid reasons. And that's because these thoughts and these emotions are coming from parts of us. So this might sound like a strange concept to someone who's new to this idea that we are not just made up of one entity. We're made up of multiple different parts. But it's the same in a way we have different parts of us physically, right? Like I mentioned, arm and hands, for example, or our organs. We have different parts to us, and so you could say we are the collection of all of these parts, just as any person has different parts to them. Now, this is very similar to saying someone has different sides to them. So, for example, you can have somebody who, they have one persona when there was one group of people, another persona with other group of people. It's similar. It is kind of similar to that. But these different parts are mostly created from long-term stresses and trauma, for example. So, for example, I mentioned in other videos, the inner child, the ego, these are examples of parts of us. But we also have parts in our shadows as well, and I mentioned that in another video. So the inner child is essentially the collection of thoughts, beliefs and experiences that we gained as a child. So that is a part of us, and there will be thoughts created from the inner child. There will be feelings created from the inner child as well. And so certain experiences we have will trigger the inner child, just as we will have certain experiences created from our ego. So the ego is our self-image created by our mind from our past experiences as well. So these will have thoughts as well that we should pay attention to but not be fully identified with. And as I mentioned in other videos on the shadow, for example, we will have parts of us for various reasons we have had to suppress and reject in ourselves, as usually growing up as kids, as teenagers. And if you want to learn more about that, I'll put a link up here so you can understand what I mean by the shadow. So when we have our shadow, we have suppressed parts of us, but they don't stop existing. They're still there. So we'll still have a collection of thoughts and emotions and beliefs that we aren't aware about, and they're stored in our subconscious. And so when we have negative feelings or painful feelings, when we have negative thoughts, they aren't bad. They aren't inherently bad. They are in fact useful to us because they give us clues as to what needs need to be met, or they will give us clues as to what that part of us is trying to protect us from. Because remember, all of us, all different parts to us, all different parts of our mind are us. So they're trying to protect us from something. They just might have different ideas as to what is the right thing to do to protect us, and another part of us might have another idea. And if this sounds strange, just consider that there are times in life where we'll be going in one direction, but then all of a sudden we'll find ourselves taking a few steps back. And this is sometimes what's referred to as self-sabotage, right? Because a part of us moving one way, or many parts of us moving one way, but then let's say, for example, the inner child may say, no, this is unsafe, and may pull us back. So that's an example of how we have different parts to us. And so an example of this is, for example, when I used to be really addicted to video games. I'll put a link to that as well, where I did a video on that, so one part of me was like, no, I don't want to play video games, for example. Like for one day I'll be like, I don't want to play video games today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something else. And then I'd start getting thoughts about playing video games. So back then I didn't really have this understanding as I do now. So I would see those thoughts and go, oh yeah, I do want to play video games. Yeah, I think I might. And then the other part of me say, no, don't do that. You're procrastinating. You've got other stuff to do. And then I'll start getting feelings about, oh, I really need to play video games. And then I'd fully believe that's completely what I want to do right now. But what it really meant was a part of me wanted to do that. So I would end up then playing video games, and before you know it, it's 2 a.m. or something like that, okay? So what does that show? So that shows that I had thoughts that came into my mind about wanting to play video games. And I had feelings which were the urge to play video games. So if I'm fully identified with those thoughts and feelings, well, what happens? I end up doing that thing that I don't really want to do. A part of me, most of me doesn't want to do, but there's still a part of me that did. So that what I would suggest for others who are in a similar situation, but you can still learn from this either way for other situations, is observe the thoughts and think to yourself, okay, as you observe that thought coming in, as an example, so I want to play video games, I don't want to do this other work, for example. So you question it and say, okay, I know that this is going to lead me to waste time, and I don't want to waste time because I have other places that I have other things I want to achieve. So what is this thought trying to protect me from? Or what is this thought telling me indirectly that I need? And so if I have the feelings, because you'll have feelings, you'll have the thoughts first that will trigger the feelings usually. So what happens is you then want to think, okay, well, I feel now like I want to play video games. What does video games do for me? And so when I questioned this, I realized, okay, so it's not the video games I want to play. The thoughts that I'm having and these feelings I'm having tell me that that part of me is trying to protect me from something through video games, or is trying to get a need met through video games. So what did video games provide when I was addicted? It provided a way to escape from problems. It provided a way to create connection, although it's very indirect connection, right? It provided a way to distract from problems. So really we could say it was providing a sense of safety. And so you can see, if you look at my other videos on depersonalization, where I explain how safety is very much connected to depersonalization. So it made sense that the more depersonalization I experienced, the more addicted to video games I seemed to become. So with that understanding, I'm going to show you a model which I've kind of put together just to explain how I see how my own thoughts and emotions work together and how parts of us exist. And you might see that also this is how it is for others as well. I think it most likely is exactly the same. So this here is our point of awareness. I mentioned in other videos. So this is the part of us that observes our thoughts and observes our emotions. So we have emotions that are suppressed. So these emotions are probably from experiences that were very painful and stressful. So especially in childhood, so because they were too painful or stressful for us to handle, they get suppressed. This is like a defense mechanism. So we don't know these are here most of the time. We also have thoughts and beliefs that are suppressed in our subconscious for the same reasons. Or sometimes we can think thoughts so often that they then become automatic and go into our subconscious. So I mentioned the conscious mind, the subconscious mind in other videos. I'll put a link up here to one that can explain it more. So the subconscious mind runs habits and automatic processes, including our beliefs and automatic thinking, which is what beliefs are. This is how I see it. So let's say we have, these are, let's say, some suppressed memories and experiences, beliefs, that kind of thing. So we don't know that these are there at the back of our mind. We also have suppressed emotions that are part of them. So you have these emotions are connected to, as an example, stressful traumatic experiences that we had to suppress. So when we start getting thoughts that are very negative, for example, or if we have an experience that starts triggering all kinds of negative thoughts and it seems very much disproportionate to what's going on, and if we have feelings come up that again seem very disproportionate to what's going on, this is what we refer to as when someone has a strong emotion that's triggered, for example. So an experience has triggered a strong emotion. What I found was when you start to experience these emotions, it is literally like another part of you has come up and it will start creating thoughts. So you could say these are connected. So this part of you here, which is a collection of memories and emotions, which is all suppressed, gets triggered from an experience that's similar to what was happening in the past. So then you'll feel the emotion come up. So now you can, this is your point of awareness here. So now you can experience it. So you're feeling this emotion and then the thoughts connected to it all start coming from the subconscious. So now you have all these thoughts appearing and you're like, oh, this is now I'm experiencing these thoughts and I can feel these intense emotions from this experience. So the reason why you need to understand this model to understand your thoughts and emotions is because we go through life and we can be completely oblivious of how past experiences have really affected us. And you'll see in the last video I did on self-awareness, this is ultimately the goal, one of the main goals of self-awareness, so that you can have life experiences, you can feel triggers, that emotional triggers that appear, and you can judge, is this really about what's happening right now in the present moment? Or am I having past experiences come up again and I'm having thoughts from these past suppressed emotions and experiences come through. And then if someone's fully identified with these experiences and emotions, they're essentially just reliving the past over and over and over again, and they don't even know it. I mentioned that in the last video on self-awareness. So the way to understand your thoughts and emotions is to observe them when they come through and understand this is a part of you. It is not the full truth of you, but it's a part of you. So you'll have multiple different parts. Obviously, I'm not saying there's four, I'm just giving an example. So you'll have different parts to you, which are almost like different sides to you. They'll have their own set of beliefs and thoughts related to them, and their own set of emotions and experiences related. So for example, this could be the inner child, for example, and maybe you have an experience that is very similar to something that happened in childhood that was traumatic, but you don't remember it because you were too young. Let's say, for example, let's say you experience neglect and abandonment issues, and let's say you go shopping and you ask somebody, like, you can tell I'm talking from experience, you can ask somebody like, oh, I need to find something, and they go away to go and find it and they just don't come back. And then you start realizing, why am I so distressed about this? Why do I have all these feelings coming up? I don't understand. What is this anxiety coming about from? Through understanding your thoughts and emotions, you understand, well, okay, what is happening in this moment objectively, from an objective perspective, isn't scary, shouldn't really create anxiety from an objective point of view. However, from the subjective point of view, it is. That's a fact. So I would then go, okay, well, what is happening now? Okay, there's like a form of neglect or abandonment that can be perceived. Right, so this makes sense because then my inner child would have experienced this in the past. So that experience is now being relived because it's noticing, oh my God, it's happened again. So then I'll start having thoughts and feelings come up that were all suppressed and related to that. And so this is essentially how I understand my own thoughts and emotions. This is how you can understand what is happening in the present now that is about something happening now. Or is it something from the past being triggered and we're believing that this is us and this is the full reality of what's happening right now? So remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness and observer of your thoughts. However, they are still a part of you that is showing you that something needs your attention. They are trying to protect you from something or trying to get a need met. And so through understanding this model, it becomes a lot easier to see there are different parts of you that are trying to protect you in some ways, that are trying to get certain needs met and not others. And so through understanding this can help you to understand your thoughts and your emotions. So thank you for watching. If this has helped, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.